Today I want to talk about the biggest, most common diet mistakes I see most people make to make sure you're not making the same ones. Hey, this is Colin DeWaay. If you want to master your metabolism, finally stop yo-yo dieting, and get results that last forever, start now by subscribing and click on that bell notification so you don't miss anything. So to me, one of the biggest mistakes people make is focusing way too much attention on the things that barely make any difference at all, while barely paying attention to the things that matter the most. So I'm going to break down what the most important things are. Starting at the top, the most important thing is adherence and sustainability. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you can't sustain the plan, if you're not actually following the plan, nothing else really matters, so we need to start there. Then the next most important thing is your total calorie balance. After that, it's your macronutrient breakdown of those calories. So that's protein, carbs, and fat, with protein by far being the most important one. Then it's things like your total fiber intake, your micronutrients like your vitamins and your minerals that you get from your food, then your meal timing and your meal frequency, and last, and certainly least, is supplements. Now when you see this, can you see how people get this completely backwards? I mean, if you talk about what most people look at when they're starting a diet, they start asking questions like, what supplements should I take? How frequently should I eat? Should I do intermittent fasting? Should I eat every couple of hours? Should I just do one big meal? Then they start asking about what types of foods they should eat. So this comes down to the micronutrient composition and then the macronutrient composition. Then they may ask about calories. Most of the time, they don't even consider how many calories they're eating. And then they definitely don't even think about how are they going to sustain this for the rest of their life? How well are they going to adhere? That's usually the last thing on anyone's mind. And there's a big reason why so few people keep the weight off after they lose it. So if you want this time to be different, start focusing on the things that matter the most. Now, the next common mistake I see people make is drastically cutting their calories way too fast to the point where they're basically barely even eating to begin with. And we do this because it gives us fast results, and we love to see fast results. You see the scale dropping like crazy. It's motivating, it's exciting, it helps create with buy-in, so there is some value to it. What most people don't understand is how adaptive your metabolism is, and that while it may create faster results in the beginning process, once your body does adapt to these calories, now you have no room to make more adjustments. You get stuck. You can't realistically drop your calories further to keep the process going. It gets overly frustrating. It feels like it's not worth the effort. And then a lot of times you just give up and say, screw it, I can't do this. End up overeating like crazy on a slow metabolism from the dieting you just did. And the weight comes back on 10 times faster than it came off. Not only does your metabolism slow down, but the faster you lose weight, the more likely you're going to lose things like lean body mass, which also has implications on your metabolism as well as body composition. A lot of that early weight is just water weight and not body fat. Plus, the lower your calories are, the less flexibility you're going to have in your diet, the more extreme you need to be, and the less likely you are to be able to adhere and sustain it, and the more likely you are to get run into the ground. If you're on low calories, doing tons of brutal exercise like a lot of people do, your body just can't recover, you feel like crap, and it's just a lifestyle you feel like you can't keep doing. And if that's what you think needs to be done, you convince yourself it's not worth it, I can't do this, it's just not for me. But the thing is, lack of patience is one of the number one killers and why so many people have such a hard time losing weight and keeping it off. This has to be a lifestyle. So it's time to slow down, think big picture, and stop rushing the process. Okay, another common thing is jumping around from diet to diet to diet, looking for the one that works for you, but never doing anything long enough for it to actually work. I see it all the time. People go from keto to paleo to vegan to carnivore to intermittent fasting to etc., never having any clue how much they're eating, how well they can adhere and sustain it, all the while just constantly dieting themselves into the ground. And the thing is, there's nothing wrong with any of those diets. Like, if you like a diet, I don't care what it is, but there's no magic diet where it just works significantly better than anything else. That doesn't exist. What works best for you is what you could adhere to, what feels the least restrictive for you, because they're all just different ways of putting you into a calorie deficit, and that's the only way, literally the only way that you can lose weight is to put yourself into a calorie deficit, which means you burn more calories as you consume. Now, people will hear that and just think, well, that just means tracking calories, the exact amount of calories in, how many calories you burn from your exercise. It's much more complex than that. There's many factors like the thermic effect of food, the thermic effect of exercise, your BMR, your NEAT, which is your overall activity throughout the day. And I have other videos that cover this in more detail. Perhaps I'll put one in the description you can check out if that's always been confusing to you. But there's no such thing as a magic diet. It just doesn't exist. Okay, this next thing I've touched on frequently already, but it definitely deserves being talked about on its own, and that is the sustainability of your diet. I say it over and over again because it's just so important. It's something almost nobody looks at. But like I said, If you can't continue doing what you did to lose the weight, there's no way you're gonna keep the weight off when it's gone. And if you try to drastically change everything about your life overnight, if you completely stop going into any social situations, if you avoid friends and family, if you're petrified of having any foods that you actually enjoy, if you try to do some complete 180 overhaul of your entire life, there's just very little chance that's something that you're gonna be able to sustain in the long run. So it needs to be a big picture thing and not just something that you feel like you're gonna do temporarily until you get the weight off. I argue learning how to include foods you actually enjoy into your diet and not fall into the all or nothing mentality is huge and critical for most people's success. This all or nothing mentality, maybe this is you, it's very common, but have you ever, and I mean ever, seen a single person who has the all or nothing mentality towards fitness, or really anything in life, who's had long-term success? I haven't seen this person. I'm sure they exist somewhere and it's probably some very extreme athlete, but just what are the chances of you being all in, 100% on, perfect every single day for the rest of your life? So learning how to be more flexible, knowing how to turn it on when necessary, but also be more flexible and balanced and back off when necessary without turning into effort binge mode when that happens is a pretty big missing ingredient from many people's success. All right, on the flip side of that though, there can be issues when there's not enough structure and planning in your own personal diet plan. We as humans tend to thrive pretty well on routine, and when we get out of that routine, it makes it difficult. And if you're just trying to wing it all the time and don't really have any plan for any day and you're just kind of seeing what happens, it makes it pretty difficult to stick to things. Whereas if you set yourself up for the success ahead of time, whether that's prepping meals on the weekend or even just planning out a day in advance or at least having a rough idea, that can help so much. One of the best pieces of advice I give people when they're in an actual cutting phase that is often ignored and I don't think a lot of people take seriously is planning out the next day. Take 5 minutes, 10 minutes maybe the day before and say, okay, here's what I want to eat for my first meal, my second meal, however frequently you want to eat, doesn't matter. If you plan that out and have that plan set in place, now you can tinker with things until things line up. So not only are you set up for success, you know what you're going to eat the next day, you have less to think about and stress about the next day, and you just follow that plan and it just makes it so much simpler. Is that the only way? No, but my point is having structure is going to have a much better chance of leading to success than just trying to wing it and hoping for the best. All right, here's something that very few people talk about, and while it's not entirely diet related, it also is, and that's the emotional side of things. I very much argue that the mental side of this process is every bit, and actually I would probably argue more important than the physical side of things, because there's almost endless ways to do this stuff. But if you can't follow the plan because you're always in your head and getting too emotional, it's just gonna make for such a difficult process. And let's be honest, you don't really need to know a serving of broccoli as a side when you go out to eat is probably a better option than a serving of cheesy, chili, gravy fries as a side. You know what I mean? Does that mean you can never have that stuff? No, but you know that. You know what types of foods are gonna be lower calorie and more filling, your cleaner foods. You understand this, but just because you know that doesn't mean that you're gonna follow through and do it. So education doesn't really mean a whole lot if you can't get out of your own head. Don't listen to that little voice in your head. That's one of the best pieces of advice I can give you. When you hear that little voice, tell it to shut up and you know that it's wrong. It's always wrong. It is out there to get you. It is not your friend. And this goes back to having a plan in place. You need to follow the plan regardless of what your emotions and your mental state is. You need to focus on following the habits and rituals that you build and not changing all the time because of your emotions. And quite frankly, this is why having a coach can really help so much, just because now you can have someone who could be objective with you. It's so hard to be objective with yourself. Even if you know what the right way should be or what you should do, if you can't be objective with yourself, it doesn't really do any good. Okay, have you heard about diet breaks? If you've been watching my videos, I'm sure you have, but perhaps this is the first time you're watching one of my videos. Diet breaks are where you take some time, maybe a week or two, possibly even longer, where you bring your calories up to around maintenance or so, bring the cardio down some, and give your body a break. And these are things that are often avoided, but I personally think are hugely helpful in your long-term process because it helps keep your hormones and your metabolism in a better place. It helps give you the mental benefit of being able to enjoy more food. It helps keep you from being run into the ground all the time. If you're always beating yourself down, constant high exercise, always in a calorie deficit, your body's gonna fight you hard. It is. There's almost no way around this. It's your body fighting for survival. It doesn't care about how lean you get. It wants to make sure you survive. And if it thinks that your calories are low and there's a lack of energy supply, it's going to do what it can to get you to gain that weight back and keep you from losing more. So you need to give your body a reason to back off and keep the process working better longer. It's a common mistake to just keep dieting all the time without ever backing off. And if you don't know how to set up your diet breaks and how you should handle that, I have a video you can check out now in this top video that will help not only explain what they are and how to do them, but break it down for you step by step. So check that out next. Otherwise, I think you'll like this bottom video instead. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I'll see you in that other video.